Sunday, 2nd September, 1666, Lord's Day. Some of our maids, sitting up late last night to get things ready against our feast today, Jane called us up about 3 in the morning to tell us of a great fire they saw in the city. So I rose and slipped on my nightgown and went to her window and thought it to be on the backside of Mark Lane at the farthest. But being unused to such fires as followed, I thought it far enough off, and so went to bed again and to sleep. About 7 rose again to dress myself, and there looked out at the window, and saw the fire not so much as it was, and further off. So to my closet, to set things to rights after yesterday's cleaning. By and by, Jane comes and tells me that she hears that above 300 houses have been burned down tonight by the fire we saw, and that it is now burning down all Fish Street by London Bridge. So I made myself ready presently and walked to the tower, and there got up upon one of the high places, Sir J. Robinson's little son going up with me, and there I did see the houses at that end of the bridge all on fire, and an infinite great fire on this and the other side, the end of the bridge, which, among other people, did trouble me for poor little Michelle and our Sarah on the bridge. So down, with my heart full of trouble, to the lieutenant of the tower, who tells me that it begun this morning in the King's Baker's house in Pudding Lane, and that it hath burned St. Magnus's church and most part of Fish Street already. So I down to the water side, and there got a boat, and through bridge, and there saw a lamentable fire. Poor Michelle's house, as far as the old Swan, already burned that way, and the fire running further, that in a very little time it got as far as the Steelyard, while I was there. Everybody endeavouring to remove their goods, and flinging into the river, or bringing them into lighters that lay off. Poor people staying in their houses as long as till the very fire touched them, and then running into boats, or clambering from one pair of stairs by the waterside to another. And among other things, the poor pigeons, I perceive, were loth to leave their houses, but hovered about the windows and balconies till they were, some of them, burned their wings and fell down. Having stayed, and in an hour's time seen the fire rage every way, and nobody to my sight endeavouring to quench it, but to remove their goods and leave all to the fire, and having seen it get as far as the Steelyard, and the wind mighty high and driving it into the city, and everything after so long a drought, proving combustible, even the very stones of churches, and among other things the poor steeple by which pretty Mrs., name missing, lives, and whereof my old schoolfellow Elborough is parson, taken fire in the very top, and there burned till it fell down. I to Whitehall, with a gentleman with me who desired to go off from the tower to see the fire in my boat, to Whitehall, and there up to the King's Closet in the Chapelle, where people come about me, and did give them an account, dismayed them all, and word was carried in to the King. So I was called for, and did tell the King and Duke of York what I saw, and that unless His Majesty did command houses to be pulled down, nothing could stop the fire. They seemed much troubled, and the King commanded me to go to my Lord Mayor from him, and command him to spare no houses, but to pull down before the fire every way. The Duke of York bid me tell him that if he would have any more soldiers, he shall. And so did my Lord Arlington afterwards, as a great secret. Here meeting with Captain Cock, I in his coach, which he lent me, and Creed with me to Paul's, and there walked along Watling Street, as well as I could, every creature coming away loaden with goods to save, and here and there sick people carried away in beds, extraordinary good goods carried in carts and on backs. At last met my Lord Mayor in Canning Street, like a man spent, with a handkerchief about his neck. To the King's message, he cried like a fainting woman, "Lord, What can I do? I am spent. People will not obey me. I have been pulling down houses, but the fire overtakes us faster than we can do it. That he needed no more soldiers, and that for himself, he must go and refresh himself, having been up all night. So he left me, and I him, and walked home, seeing people all almost distracted, and no manner of means used to quench the fire. The houses too, so very thick thereabouts, and full of matter for burning, as pitch and tar in Thames Street, and warehouses of oil, and wines, and brandy, and other things. Here I saw Mr. Isaac Oublon, the handsome man, prettily dressed and dirty, at his door at Dowgate, receiving some of his brother's things, whose houses were on fire, and, as he says, have been removed twice already, and he doubts, as it soon proved, that they must be in a little time removed from his house also, which was a sad consideration. And to see the churches all filling with goods by people who themselves should have been quietly there at this time. By this time it was about 12 o'clock, and so home, and there find my guests, which was Mr. Wood and his wife Barbary Sheldon, and also Mr. Moons, she mighty fine, and her husband, for aught I see, a likely man. But Mr. Moons' design, and mine, which was to look over my closet, and please him with the sight thereof, which he hath long desired, was wholly disappointed. For we were in great trouble and disturbance at this fire, not knowing what to think of it. However, we had an extraordinary good dinner, and as merry as at this time we could be. While at dinner, Mrs. Batelier come to inquire after Mr. Wolfe and Staines, who it seems are related to them, whose houses in Fish Street are all burned, and they in a sad condition. She would not stay in the fright. Soon as dined, I and Moon away, and walked through the city, the streets full of nothing but people and horses and carts loaden with goods, ready to run over one another, and removing goods from one burned house to another. They now removing out of Canning Streets, which received goods in the morning, into Lombard Streets, and further. And among others, I now saw my little goldsmith, Stokes, receiving some friend's goods, whose house itself was burned the day after. We parted at Paul's, he home, and I to Paul's Wharf, where I had appointed a boat to attend me, and took in Mr. Carcass and his brother, whom I met in the streets, and carried them below and above bridge, to and again to see the fire, which was now got further, both below and above, and no likelihood of stopping it. Met with the King and Duke of York in their barge, and with them to Queen Hithe, and there called Sir Richard Brown to them. Their order was only to pull down houses apace, and so below bridge the waterside, but little was or could be done, the fire coming upon them so fast. Good hopes there was of stopping it at the 3 cranes above, and at Butolph's Wharf below bridge, if care be used. But the wind carries it into the city, so as we know not by the waterside what it do there. River full of lighters and boats taking in goods, and good goods swimming in the water, and only I observed that hardly one lighter or boat in 3 that had the goods of a house in, but there was a pair of virginals in it. Having seen as much as I could now, I away to Whitehall by appointment, and there walked to St. James's Parks, and there met my wife, and Creed, and Wood, and his wife, and walked to my boat, and there upon the water again, and to the fire up and down, it still increasing, and the wind great. So near the fire as we could for smoke, and all over the Thames, with one's face in the wind, you were almost burned with a shower of fire drops. This is very true. So as houses were burned by these drops and flakes of fire, 3 or 4, nay 5 or 6 houses, one from another. When we could endure no more upon the water, we to a little alehouse on the bankside, over against the 3 cranes, and there stayed till it was dark almost, and saw the fire grow, and as it grew darker, appeared more and more, and in corners, and upon steeples, and between churches and houses, as far as we could see up the hill of the city, in a most horrid, malicious, bloody flame, not like the fine flame of an ordinary fire. Barbary and her husband away before us. We stayed till, it being darkish, we saw the fire as only one entire arch of fire from this to the other side the bridge, and in a bow up the hill for an arch of above a mile long. It made me weep to see it, the churches, houses, and all on fire and flaming at once, and a horrid noise the flames made, and the cracking of houses at their ruins. So home with a sad heart, and there find everybody discoursing and lamenting the fire, and poor Tom Hayter come with some few of his goods saved out of his house, which is burned upon Fish Street's hill. I invited him to lie at my house, and did receive his goods, but was deceived in his lying there, the news coming every moment of the growth of the fire. So as we were forced to begin to pack up our own goods and prepare for their removal, and did by moonshine, it being brave dry and moonshine and warm weather, carry much of my goods into the garden, and Mr. Hayter and I did remove my money and iron chests into my cellar, as thinking that the safest place, and got my bags of gold into my office, ready to carry away, and my chief papers of accounts also there, and my tallies into a box by themselves. So great was our fear, as Sir W. Batten hath carts come out of the country to fetch away his goods this night. We did put Mr. Hayter, poor man, to bed a little, but he got but very little rest, so much noise being in my house, taking down of goods. Monday, 3rd September, 1666. About 4 o'clock in the morning, my Lady Batten sent me a cart to carry away all my money and plate and best things to Sir W. Ryder's at Bednall Green, which I did riding myself in my nightgown in the cart, and Lord to see how the streets and the highways are crowded with people running and riding and getting of carts at any rate to fetch away things. I find Sir W. Ryder tired with being called up all night and receiving things from several friends, his house full of goods and much of Sir W. Batten's and Sir W. Penn's. I am eased at my heart to have my treasure so well secured. Then home, with much ado to find a way, nor any sleep all this night to me, nor my poor wife. But then, and all this day, she and I and all my people labouring to get away the rest of our things, and did get Mr. Tooker to get me a lighter to take them in, and we did carry them, myself some, over Tower Hill, which was by this time full of people's goods, bringing their goods thither, and down to the lighter, which lay at next quay, above the Tower dock. And here was my neighbour's wife, Mrs., name missing, with her pretty child, and some few of her things, which I did willingly give way to be saved with mine. But there was no passing with anything through the postern. The crowd was so great. The Duke of York of this day by the office, and spoke to us, and did ride with his guard up and down the city to keep all quiet, he being now general, and having the care of all. This day, Mercer being not at home, but against her mistress's order, gone to her mother's, and my wife going thither to speak with W. Hewer, met her there, and was angry, and her mother saying that she was not a prentice girl to ask leave every time she goes abroad. My wife with good reason was angry, and when she came home, bid her be gone again. And so she went away, which troubled me, but yet less than it would, because of the condition we are in. Fear of coming into in a little time of being less able to keep one in her quality. At night lay down a little upon a quilt of W. Hewer's in the office, all my own things being packed up or gone, and after me my poor wife did the like, we having fed upon the remains of yesterday's dinner, having no fire, nor dishes, nor any opportunity of dressing anything. Tuesday, 4th September, 1666. Up by break of day to get away the remainder of my things, which I did by a lighter at the iron gate, and my hands so few that it was the afternoon before we could get them all away. Sir W. Penn and I to Tower Street, and there met the fire, burning 3 or 4 doors beyond Mr. Howell's, whose goods, poor man, his trays and dishes, shovels, etc., were flung all along Tower Street in the kennels, and people working therewith from one end to the other, the fire coming on in that narrow street, on both sides, with infinite fury. Sir W. Batten, not knowing how to remove his wine, did dig a pit in the garden, and laid it in there, and I took the opportunity of laying all the papers of my office that I could not otherwise dispose of. And in the evening Sir W. Penn and I did dig another, and put our wine in it, and I my Parmesan cheese, as well as my wine, and some other things. The Duke of York was at the office this day, at Sir W. Penn's, but I happened not to be within. This afternoon, sitting melancholy with Sir W. Penn in our garden, and thinking of the certain burning of this office, without extraordinary means, I did propose for the sending up of all our workmen from Woolwich and Deptford yards, none whereof yet appeared, and to write to Sir W. Coventry to have the Duke of York's permission to pull down houses, rather than lose this office, which would much hinder the King's business. So Sir W. Penn, he went down this night, in order to the sending them up tomorrow morning, and I wrote to Sir W. Coventry about the business, but received no answer. This night, Mrs. Turner, who, poor woman, was removing her goods all this day, good goods into the garden, and knows not how to dispose of them, and her husband supped with my wife and I at night, in the office, upon a shoulder of mutton from the cook's, without any napkin or anything, in a sad manner, but were merry. Only now and then, walking into the garden, and saw how horridly the sky looks, all on a fire in the night, was enough to put us out of our wits, and indeed it was extremely dreadful, for it looks just as if it was at us, and the whole heaven on fire. I, after supper, walked in the dark, down to Tower Street, and there saw it all on fire at the Trinity House on that side, and the Dolphin Tavern on this side, which was very near us, and the fire with extraordinary vehemence. Now begins the practice of blowing up, of houses in Tower Street, those next the Tower, which at first did frighten people more than anything, but it stopped the fire where it was done, it bringing down the houses to the ground in the same places they stood, and then it was easy to quench what little fire was in it, though it kindled nothing almost. W. Hewer this day went to see how his mother did, and comes late home, telling us how he hath been forced to remove her to Islington, her house in Pye Corner being burned, so that the fire is got so far that way, and all the Old Bailey, and was running down to Fleet Street, and Paul's is burned, and all Cheapside. I wrote to my father this night, but the post-house being burned, the letter could not go. Wednesday, 5th September, 1666. I lay down in the office again, upon W. Hewer's quilt, being mighty weary and sore in my feet, with going till I was hardly able to stand. About 2 in the morning, my wife calls me up and tells me of new cries of fire, it being come to Barking Church, which is the bottom of our lane. I up, and finding it so, resolved presently to take her away, and did, and took my gold, which was about £2,350, W. Hewer and Jane, down by Proundy's boat to Woolwich. But Lord, what sad sight it was by moonlight to see, the whole city almost on fire, that you might see it plain at Woolwich, as if you were by it. There, when I come, I find the gates shut, but no guard kept at all, which troubled me, because of discourse now begun that there is plot in it, and that the French had done it. I got the gates open, and to Mr. Sheldon's, where I locked up my gold and charged my wife and W. Hewer never to leave the room without one of them in it, night or day. So back again, by the way, seeing my goods well in the lighters at Deptford, and watched well by people. Home. And whereas I expected to have seen our house on fire, it being now about 7 o'clock, it was not, but to the fire, and there find greater hopes than I expected, for my confidence of finding our office on fire was such that I durst not ask anybody how it was with us till I come and saw it not burned. But going to the fire, I find by the blowing up of houses and the great help given by the workmen out of the King's yards, sent up by Sir W. Penn, there is a good stop given to it, as well as at Mark Lane end as ours, it having only burned the dial of Barking Church and part of the porch, and was there quenched. I up to the top of Barking steeple, and there saw the saddest sight of desolation that I ever saw. Everywhere great fires, oil cellars, and brimstone, and other things burning. I became afeard to stay there long, and therefore down again as fast as I could, the fire being spread as far as I could see it, and to Sir W. Penn's, and there eat a piece of cold meat, having eaten nothing since Sunday but the remains of Sunday's dinner. Here I met with Mr. Young and Whistler, and having removed all my things, and received good hopes that the fire at our end is stopped, they and I walked into the town, and find Fanchurch Street, Gracious Street, and Lombard Street all in dust. The Exchange a sad sight, nothing standing there, of all the statues or pillars, but Sir Thomas Gresham's picture in the corner. Walked into Moorfields, our feet ready to burn, walking through the town among the hot coals, and find that full of people, and poor wretches carrying their good there, and everybody keeping his goods together by themselves, and a great blessing it is to them that it is fair weather for them to keep abroad night and day. Drank there, and paid 2 pence for a plain penny loaf. Thence homeward, having passed through Cheapside and Newgate Market, all burned, and seen Anthony Joyce's house in fire, and took up, which I keep by me, a piece of glass of Mercer's chapel in the street, where much more was, so melted and buckled with the heat of the fire, like parchment. I also did see a poor cat taken out of a hole in the chimney, joining to the wall of the Exchange, with the hair all burned off the body, and yet alive. So home at night, and find their good hopes of saving our office, but great endeavours of watching all night, and having men ready. And so we lodged them in the office, and had drink and bread and cheese for them. And I lay down and slept a good night about midnight, though when I rose, I heard that there had been a great alarm of French and Dutch being risen, which proved nothing. But it is a strange thing to see how long this time did look since Sunday, having been always full of variety of actions, and little sleep, that it looked like a week or more, and I had forgot almost the day of the week. Thursday, 6th September, 1666. Up about 5 o'clock, and where met Mr. Gordon at the gate of the office, I intending to go out as I used every now and then today to see how the fire is, to call our men to Bishopsgate, where no fire had yet been near, and there is now one broke out, which did give great grounds to people, and to me too, to think that there is some kind of plot in this, on which many by this time have been taken, and it hath been dangerous for any stranger to walk in the streets. But I went with the men, and we did put it out in a little time, so that was well again. It was pretty to see how hard the women did work in the canals, sweeping of water. But then they would scold for drink, and be as drunk as devils. I saw good butts of sugar broke open in the street, and people go and take handsful out, and put into beer, and drink it. And now, all being pretty well, I took boat and over to Suffolk, and took boat on the other side the bridge, and so to Westminster, thinking to shift myself, being all in dirt from top to bottom, but could not there find any place to buy a shirt or pair of gloves, Westminster Hall being full of people's goods, those in Westminster having removed all their goods, and the exchequer money put into vessels to carry to none such, but to the Swan, and there was trimmed, and then to Whitehall, but saw nobody, and so home. A sad sight to see how the river looks, no houses nor church near it, to the Temple, where it stopped. At home did go with Sir W. Batten, and our neighbour, Knightley, who with one more, was the only man of any fashion left in all the neighbourhood thereabouts, they all removing their goods and leaving their houses to the mercy of the fire. To Sir R. Ford's, and there dined in an earthen platter, a fried breast of mutton, a great many of us, but very merry, and indeed as good a meal, though as ugly a one as ever I had in my life. Thence down to Deptford, and there with great satisfaction landed all my goods at Sir G. Carteret's safe, and nothing missed I could see or hurt. This being done to my great content, I home, and to Sir W. Batten's, and there with Sir R. Ford, Mr. Knightley, and one Withers, a professed lying rogue, supped well, and mighty merry, and our fears over. From them to the office, and there slept with the office full of labourers, who talked, and slept, and walked all night long there. But strange it was to see Clothworkers' Hall on fire, these 3 days and nights in one body of flame, it being the cellar full of oil. Up by 5 o'clock, and blessed be God, find all well, and by water to Paul's Wharf. Walked thence, and saw all the town burned, and a miserable sight of Paul's church, with all the roofs fallen, and the body of the choir fallen into St. Faith's. Paul's school also, Ludgate and Fleet Street, my father's house, and the church, and a good part of the Temple, the like. So to Creed's lodging, near the New Exchange, and there find him laid down upon a bed. The house all unfurnished, there being fears of the fires coming to them. There borrowed a shirt of him, and washed. To Sir William Coventry, at St. James's, who lay without curtains, having removed all his goods, as the King at Whitehall and everybody had done, and was doing. He hopes we shall have no public distractions upon this fire, which is what everybody fears, because of the talk of the French having a hand in it. And it is a proper time for discontents. But all men's minds are full of care to protect themselves and save their goods. The militia is in arms everywhere. Our fleets, he tells me, have been in sight one of another, and most unhappily by foul weather were parted to our great losses, as in reason they do conclude. The Dutch being come out only to make a shoe and please their people, but in very bad condition as to stores, victuals, and men. They are at Bullen, and our fleet come to St. Helens. We have got nothing, but have lost one ship, but he knows not what. Thence to the Swan, and there drank, and so home, and find all well. My Lord Brunker, at Sir W. Batten's, and tells us the General is sent for up, to come to advise with the King about business at this juncture, and to keep all quiet, which is great honour to him, but I am sure is but a piece of dissimulation. So home, and did give orders for my house to be made clean, and then down to Woolwich, and there find all well. Dined, and Mrs. Markham come to see my wife. So I up again, and calling at Deptford for some things of W. Hewer's, he being with me, and then home, and spent the evening with Sir R. Ford, Mr. Knightley, and Sir W. Penn at Sir W. Batten's. This day our merchants first met at Gresham College, which, by proclamation, is to be their exchange. Strange to hear what is bid for houses all up and down here. A friend of Sir W. Ryder's, having £150 for what he used to let for £40 per annum. Much dispute whether Custom House shall be thereby the growth of the city again, to be foreseen. My Lord Treasurer, they say, and others, would have it at the other end of the town. I home late to Sir W. Penn's, who did give me a bed, but without curtains or hangings, all being down. So here I went, the first time into a naked bed, only my drawers on, and did sleep pretty well. But still hath sleeping and waking had a fear of fire in my heart, that I took little rest. People do all the world over cry out of the simplicity of my Lord Mayor in general, and more particularly in this business of the fire, laying it all upon him. A proclamation is come out for markets to be kept at Leadenhall and Milan Green, and several other places about the town, and Tower Hill, and all churches to be set open to receive poor people.